The story of the Aburi Accord begins with the tragic events that tore Nigeria apart in 1966. On January 15, 1966, a military coup led predominantly by Igbo officers resulted in the assassination of key northern and western political leaders. The ethnic composition of the plotters and the victims created a narrative heavily influenced by British media that this was an Igbo-led attempt to dominate Nigeria's political landscape. The response was swift and brutal. On July 29, 1966, a counter-coup brought Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon to power. But Lieutenant Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu of the Eastern region refused to recognize his authority. What followed was a systematic massacre. Between May and July 1967, approximately 30,000 Igbos were unalived across northern Nigeria in what can only be described as a genocide. Traumatized Eastern refugees flooded back to their homeland carrying tales of unimaginable horror. The critical moment came in November 1966. Ojukwu, fearing for his personal safety, agreed to attend Supreme Military Council meetings only if held outside Nigeria. Significantly, he had already rejected a British-sponsored mediation conference on a British naval vessel of Lagos, recognizing British complicity in the genocide and remembering the historical precedent of King Jaja of Opobo, who was kidnapped by the British after accepting similar peace talks in the 19th century. Ghana's General J.A. Ankara offered to host the mediation, and from January 4 to 5, 1967, Nigeria's military leadership gathered in Aburi. This represented something unprecedented, the first genuinely African-led diplomatic initiative to resolve a post-colonial crisis. The gathering included all key Nigerian military governors under Ankara's neutral leadership. The remarkable achievement was the level of consensus reached despite 7 months of genocide. The delegates agreed on the fundamental restructuring of Nigeria's governance. The delegates agreed that legislative and executive authority would remain with the Supreme Military Council, not with any individual leader. This was a direct challenge to Gowon's position as Supreme Commander. Crucially, any decision affecting the entire country had to be determined by the Supreme Military Council. If a meeting wasn't possible, such matters required referral to military governors for their comments and concurrence. This effectively dismantled the concentration of power that Gowon had exercised since seizing control in July 1966. Military reorganization. First, the army would be governed by the Supreme Military Council under a chairman known as Commander-in-Chief. Secondly, a military headquarters with equal regional representation would be established. Third, area commands corresponding to existing regions would be created. Fourth, military governors would control their area commands for internal security matters. Renunciation of force. In a declaration proposed by Ojukwu, all members unanimously agreed to, first, renounce the use of force in the settling of Nigerian crisis. Secondly, reaffirm faith in discussions and negotiations as the only peaceful resolution method. Third, exchange information on arms and ammunition quantities. Fourth, share weapons equitably among commands. Fifth, halt arms importation until normalcy is returned. This created a confederal system that gave regions unprecedented autonomy, more than any point in Nigeria's history, even during the British colonial period's regionalization drive of the 1950s. The Aburi Accord's failure reveals the complex interplay of internal and external forces that doomed Nigeria to civil war. Within days of returning to Lagos, the Federal Civil Service and British advisors began pressuring Gowon to renege on the agreement. British analyst Frederick Forsyth documented how the technocrats at home took a second look at what had been agreed and realized that Gowon had gone further than they would have wished. The permanent secretaries worked vigorously to get Gowon back on track, meaning back to centralized control. Britain's opposition was immediate and fierce. The Accord's confederal structure threatened British economic interests, as it would have given regions control over their resources. For 2 days in Ghana, Gowon had been beyond reach of his British intelligence handler for the first time in almost a year. The opposition chorus grew. Northern leaders feared losing control of the southern oil reserves. The Yoruba leader Obafemi Awolowo joined the opposition when offered finance ministry position, and various interest groups mobilized against the accord. The breaking point came in March 1967. Ojukwu announced that the eastern region would implement the Aburi Agreement unilaterally, declaring it was Aburi or a clean break with Nigeria. Gowon responded by threatening military action, ironically violating the Accord's central principle of renouncing force. When Ojukwu proceeded to implementation, Gowon imposed a total economic blockade of the East. The failure of Aburi led to Biafra's secession and the devastating civil war that claimed over 3 million lives. The enduring myth that Gowon fought to keep Nigeria united masked a darker truth. The war was driven by northern economic interests in the southern oil reserves, not patriotic unity. Unlike most civil wars fought for national preservation, this was what scholars now call the most avoidable war of the 20th century. A conflict that would have been prevented if the Aburi Accord had been implemented in good faith. The Aburi Accord remains a testament to African diplomatic capacity and a tragic reminder of how external interference and internal greed can destroy even the most promising peace initiatives. His legacy challenges us to imagine what Nigeria and Africa might have become if authentic African solutions had been allowed to flourish. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to like and follow for more Nigerian stories.